Today's video is going to be a full walk through Chinon in the Loire Valley in France on a market day. So what we're going to do is walk through the beautiful market, which takes place, I believe, every Thursday and then daily throughout the summer. And then we're going to walk through the medieval back streets. We're going to take you all the way up from the town up to the bottom of the fortress, which we visited in a prior video. And then we're going to take a tiny medieval back alley back down the hill, and in a big circle we're going to come back through the market, and I will talk about the history and the things we're seeing all along the way. This is a beautiful market. I believe there are about 100 stalls to visit here. We just kind of walked through the whole thing and checked it out. Lots of things to see. This is super fun if you want to spend a morning walking through the market. It was April, so you're going to see a lot of early spring vegetables, and of course there were a lot of plants set out for gardeners. So if you want to get your garden starts and early spring flowers and bedding plants, this is a great place to do it, just like farmers markets at home. There's also, of course, a lot of wonderful food, like this cheese vendor. Oh my goodness, the cheeses. And there are places where you could walk through and get a little walk-up lunch if you wanted. So there were lots of things to eat and places to kind of step aside and have a little bite while you're here. There was even yarn and sewing things, so if you're into crafty stuff. There's a lot of things like you'd see at a market at home, you know, homemade crafts and candles and soaps and whatnot. So very fun to walk through. One of the coolest vendors we found was this, and I asked him, he let me film this gorgeous setup. This is all artisan cheeses and meats, like charcuterie, and you can't believe the layout he's got here. I was so impressed. Amazing salami, and the guy was super nice and gave us a whole little walkthrough on what types of meats he uses and what types of cheeses we were trying. He was super helpful and just really cool. It's always really nice, all of these vendors, if you take the time to stop and visit with them, they're super nice and they love to talk about what they're selling, and they're super helpful if you just spend a little time and chat with them. After the market, we went through some of the streets and just kind of wandered our way up towards the fortress, and we will dive into some of the history of this beautiful place. Look at this wisteria. It's everywhere. It was blooming everywhere in April. It was so pretty. My favorite parts of history about this town take place around 1189, when Henry II, the father of Richard the Lionheart, was here. His sons were in rebellion against him, and Henry II was actually very ill here at Chinon. He was actually forced to sign a peace treaty with Richard and Francis King Philip at nearby Colombières, which was now called Villandry, famous garden spot if you want to go there. They signed that peace treaty on July 4th of 1189. Henry was so sick and weak that he had to be carried back here to Chinon by litter, and he died 2 days later at the fortress here on July 6th of 1189. Later on, in 1203, King John had to send a mercenary band to rescue his queen Isabella from Chinon, the fortress here, because she was being besieged by a band of rebels. There's also a bunch of Joan of Arc history that took place here in the 1400s. Between 1427 and 1450, Charles VII, the Dauphin of France, made Chinon his residence, and it was here in one of the towers that a young Joan of Arc stayed when she visited here when she was trying to convince Charles to stand up to the English and reclaim his throne. She went on from here to join the French army at Orleans, and she probably couldn't have possibly imagined where her journey would take her beyond that, to her historic glory and eventual sad fate at Rouen. And the square where the market took place that we just walked through is actually at a place called Place Jeanne d'Arc. It's very famous, and it has a beautiful statue of her right in the middle. We also had a quick cafe lunch here, and ran into, of all things, a Texan serving coffee in a back street right here in Chinon, France. I started my conversation in French and she immediately was like, I'm from America, and she's from Texas. She's just living in Chinon and making coffee here at this gorgeous little cafe, so we got to visit with her. It was really sweet. And as usual, we were sort of lost most of the time here, but if you find your way through here into this parking lot, you will find a big elevator right here. And this takes you up to that upper level and the fortress, which you can just see bits of up above. So if you're here on foot, if you can find your way to this elevator, it's a nice way to easily get between the town below and the fortress up above. We are not going to go in the fortress. We've done that on a prior trip. But we are going to take you up to the entrance of it, and then we're going to turn around, and then we're going to walk back down a very ancient medieval cobbled road that was the original, probably the original road down from the fortress into the village. Chinon, if you're visiting, definitely plan on some steep, uneven ground. This is a little bit of a climb if you're going back and forth between the village and the fortress. A lot of steep ground to cover here. So if you are planning a visit to Chinon, if you want to do the fortress and the town, it would work really well to come into town on a market day and maybe see the market and grab a bite to eat, and then hike up like we've just done here and come up to the fortress. We are not going in the fortress this time because we've done it before, but you could do it. It would make a long day. I would say probably that's a full day. Don't try to plan anything else besides that. Although on the day we did the fortress, we were there in 2022. And since then they've done a lot of renovation. They have added a new museum, which I think is like a battle armor museum. And there's some more Joan of Arc stuff to see in the fortress. So definitely don't skip that. But if you do only the fortress, you could also take time in the afternoon to go out to the Abbey at Fontevraud, which is a short drive from here, which is where they have the tombs of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Henry II, Richard the Lionheart, and King John's wife Isabella. And some other graves were there too. The bodies are not there anymore, but the tombs are there, and it is an absolutely stunning place to go. Also, if you're into Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, as I am, I've missed it both times I've been here. There is a troglodyte chapel in a cave that is near here, very close to Chinon. You can drive to, and if you can get in, make sure you check the dates. I've missed the date when it's open both times I've been here, but they are open, and you can see the what is believed to be the only contemporary painting of Eleanor of Aquitaine done during her lifetime. Super, super cool. If you've been to that, please let me know. I would love to hear about it. So all in all, do a full day and do the town and the fortress, but plan for a lot of walking and some fairly steep climbing on the way up here. And here we've just turned around, we're heading back down, and just, I always love looking at these ancient buildings, fortresses, and castles, and I love to just wonder what happened in all of these spaces. I want to know what's behind all of these little doors. Like, I want to know, what is that little cave right there? I want to know what these doors are about. Is that a tool shed? Is that like the groundskeeper's cottage? I always want to know what is inside all of these doors. But this is just a terrific place to visit. And we're going to head back down to the village now, and I'll show you the interesting bathroom that we found here as well. And here we have the original old route down the hill. You can't believe how steep and uneven and rocky this is. I can just imagine carts coming up and down this. Can you imagine riding a horse up and down this? Or anyone that was coming up from the river below or the valley? If you weren't coming from up above on the high ground, you would have to climb up this with your little wagon load of goods. And I highly don't recommend this unless you have good walking shoes on. It's steep and uneven, and it just zigzags its way all the way back down to the village. So we're going to walk down the whole thing, and what I like to imagine, since this was original, in somewhere around the late 1170s to early 1180s, Henry II, once again, when all of his sons were in rebellion against him, his oldest son, who was another Henry, who was called the Young King, once when he was in rebellion with his brothers against their father Henry, Henry took the young Henry here to Chinon and tried to keep him here under something of a house arrest. And they spent the night here. The young King Henry is said to have drugged his guard and slipped out of Chinon in the night and rode on for Paris to ally himself with Louis VII, who was also Queen Eleanor's ex-husband, which is a story for another time. But I like to think of him slipping out in the dark and maybe tiptoeing with his horse down this very path. Wouldn't that be amazing? And we ran into a French cat who escorted us the rest of the way down part of the path, which was so funny. He didn't let me pet him, but he was wanting to guide us along the way, which was so sweet. And you can see as you just make this last corner, we're back sort of down into the main old part of town that the tourists kind of walk up and down. So it's just a super cool way, like a back way up to the fortress. So if you want to hike up to the fortress and not take the elevator, you could find this funky little cobblestone ancient path and zigzag the hike as they would have done in the day and head up to the fortress. And then we're back down into the main streets, and you can see how quiet it was. We were here, this is like during the market time on a market day in April. So we're not talking about a crazy busy lot of tourists cramming in all these back streets. So if you like a nice quiet walk and you want to see some really pretty half-timbered ancient buildings in an old part of town, this is a quiet and beautiful place to just walk and see some really old French architecture. And I'm not sure what street we just came out of, but if you look here right ahead of us, we are back, we've made a full circle, and that is the little cafe area that we walked up around on the other side and where we saw the little traffic jam and went under and out into where the elevator is. So if you can kind of find this area, you've made a big circle. From here, we just wound our way down. We used Google Maps to pin our car parking spot because super hard to find your car when you've parked in these kind of places, or to find your way back through the town to get back to where we started. It's always fun to just walk through all these back streets. So we just kind of wandered like in the general direction of where we thought our car was, and we eventually popped back out at the market. As we come to the end of the street, you can see the beginning of the market, and they were just coming to the end of the market day. I believe it shuts down around 1. So we came back through sort of at the tail end of the market, and we're back here in the big square. And we're going to walk past the big statue of Joan of Arc before we find our car. And I will also say there's not a lot of parking. When we got here, we just basically curb hopped up onto the side of the road and squeezed our car in, which also caused some damage to our rental car. And I will explain in a future video how to deal with accidents that happen to rental cars when you are in France, and how to make sure you're not on the hook for the expenses. And as we came to the end of the trip and we're looking for a car, we were hoping to find a public restroom. And we did in fact find one right across the street in this adorable little building. But we went in the building and guess what we found? Whoa, that is the toilet. So don't be surprised at what you find in French bathrooms. After this, we actually had an impromptu change of plans after this particular stop. We were going to go up into the fortress and we didn't feel like it. So we actually stopped and made a new plan real quick, checked the map, and found an entirely new chateau to go to that was not on our itinerary at all, and it turned out to be a wonderful stop. Our next stop will be the Chateau d'Ussé, just down the road from Chinon. Look forward to seeing you in that video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this walk through Chinon and all of the lovely history here.